The Wall Street Journal reports U.S. officials say more air defenses are needed before any strike to protect bases and partners. Those officials suggest major action may depend on deploying more air defenses first, according to the reporting. The Wall Street Journal cited U.S. officials saying additional arms are needed to shield Israel, Arab allies, and U.S. bases, especially from missiles and drone swarms. The officials describe retaliation risk as a key constraint on timing and scale. Officials said the U.S. could carry out limited airstrikes quickly, but a larger operation would likely trigger a similar or broader reaction from Iran across the region, according to the Wall Street Journal report. The distinction between limited strikes and larger operations is significant for understanding the current planning posture. The report offers one window into internal planning concerns based on officials' accounts. It suggests that defensive readiness is being prioritized alongside any offensive considerations during the current period of tensions. Officials cited by the Wall Street Journal say air and missile defenses still need to be reinforced to protect bases and partners in case of retaliation. Washington is reportedly working to deploy more air and missile defense systems across the Middle East. While U.S. warships, stealth fighters, and missile interceptors are moving to the region according to various reports, the Wall Street Journal assessment indicates that American bases, Israel, and Arab allies remain a concern regarding Iran's drones and ballistic missiles. The gap between offensive capability and defensive readiness is the focus of the officials' concerns. The officials describe retaliation risk as a key constraint on timing and scale, according to the reporting. This suggests that the administration's approach involves balancing offensive options with defensive preparations. This reporting comes as both sides continue public posturing while diplomatic channels remain active. The tension between military preparation and diplomatic engagement defines the current phase of the crisis. Reuters reported the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier group has arrived in the U.S. Central Command region. The carrier provides mobile air power and sea-based strike options, according to defense reporting on carrier capabilities. The U.S. Air Force has also deployed a wide range of assets, including stealth fighters and refueling tankers to increase reach and persistence over long distances, according to defense reporting. Reports show additional F-15Es have deployed, and F-35As were seen transiting toward Europe. Final destination not confirmed. The F-35 played a key role during what has been called U.S. Operation Midnight Hammer against Iran in June 2025, according to reporting on that operation. Analysts often view stealth aircraft as useful for high-risk strike missions, but current intent is not confirmed. The number of naval destroyers capable of intercepting aerial threats has also increased, adding more missile defense coverage for ships and nearby bases, according to defense reporting. THAAD and Patriot air defense systems are also reportedly being deployed to U.S. bases across the Middle East, strengthening protection against ballistic and cruise threats. The Trump administration is reportedly concerned about Iran's ability to retaliate with drones and missiles, which could overwhelm defenses if coverage is thin, according to the Wall Street Journal report. This concern shapes the cautious approach to timing any potential operations. Iran has made clear that U.S. bases and military assets in the Middle East would be retaliation targets if attacked, aiming to deter Washington by raising costs, according to Iranian official statements reported in various outlets. The threat of regional retaliation is central to Iranian deterrence messaging. Iranian outlets have circulated strike simulations and hardline rhetoric about U.S. naval forces, but specific operational threats cannot be independently verified. Such material represents Iranian messaging rather than confirmed capabilities or plans. State media quoted Khamenei warning retaliation would be severe if Iran is attacked, without detailing specific countries. The regional framing of any potential conflict is consistent with Iranian messaging throughout the current crisis. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei warned that a U.S. attack could spark a regional war, according to Iranian state media coverage. The warning represents one of his most direct statements about the potential scope of any conflict during the current tensions. When you hear them talking about war, saying things like, "We'll come with this plane or that plane and do this or that," it's nothing new, Khamenei said, according to state media coverage. The Americans have threatened us repeatedly in the past, saying all options are on the table. Similarly, this person constantly claims they brought warships. But the Iranian nation shall not be intimidated by these things, Khamenei said, according to the reporting. The Iranian people will not be stirred by these threats. They do not fear fair confrontation. We are not the initiators and do not want to attack any country, but the Iranian nation will strike a strong blow against anyone who attacks and threatens Iran, Khamenei said, according to state media. The statement combines defiance with framing Iran as responding to aggression rather than initiating conflict. Asked about Khamenei's warning that a U.S. attack could spark regional war, Trump told reporters the U.S. has the biggest, most powerful ships nearby, and said he hopes for a deal, reports say. The comment combines military positioning with continued emphasis on diplomatic resolution. In a couple of days, hopefully, we'll make a deal, Trump said, according to the reported statements. If we don't make a deal, then we'll find out whether or not he was right. The framing leaves room for both diplomatic and military outcomes. Trump has been pushing Iran to make a deal to end its nuclear program to avoid war, pairing military pressure with a diplomatic off-ramp, according to reporting on the administration's approach. The strategy combines coercive pressure with stated willingness to negotiate. The exchange between Khamenei's warnings and Trump's response illustrates the rhetorical dimension of the current standoff. Both leaders project strength while leaving room for diplomatic outcomes, though the terms of any potential agreement remain disputed. Reports say the U.S. and Iran have agreed to hold talks in an effort to reduce tensions, suggesting diplomacy is being tested even as forces mobilize, according to various reporting. The diplomatic track continues alongside military preparations. Axios and Reuters report talks are being arranged in Turkey, led by Steve Witkoff and Iran's Abbas Araqchi. The involvement of a high-profile U.S. envoy signals seriousness about diplomatic engagement. A top U.S. official told Axios that Turkey, Egypt, and Qatar will be part of the meeting, indicating a broader regional role in facilitating dialogue. The involvement of multiple regional powers suggests coordinated mediation efforts. Iranian media reported Masoud Pezeshkian authorized restarting nuclear talks within a nuclear-only framework. The Iranian decision represents a significant development in the diplomatic track, though the scope of any negotiations remains limited from Tehran's perspective. Turkey, Egypt, and Qatar are coordinating efforts to arrange meetings between U.S. and Iranian officials to mediate an agreement that could reduce tensions, according to reporting on diplomatic efforts. The trilateral mediation role reflects regional stakes in preventing escalation. The U.S. has sent signals via indirect channels indicating willingness to negotiate, though Iran denies recent direct contacts, according to various reporting on diplomatic communications. The gap between public positions and back-channel communications is difficult to assess from outside. Reports describe Trump tying military pressure to demands on Iran's nuclear file and broader behavior. Exact terms remain disputed. The framing presents military positioning as leverage for negotiation rather than preparation for imminent conflict. The diplomatic developments suggest tensions remain high, but diplomacy has gained ground, with advances in indirect nuclear negotiations and regional mediation that could reduce the risk of military strikes, according to various assessments of the current situation. Saudi officials said they will not allow their airspace to be used, and the UAE has reiterated its territory will not be used for hostile action, reports say. These stances complicate U.S. operational planning and reflect regional calculations about retaliation risks. The regional dimension adds complexity to any potential U.S. military action. Bases in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, and other Gulf states host U.S. forces, but their host governments face difficult calculations about involvement in any conflict. Iranian missile capabilities reportedly put regional bases within range, creating vulnerabilities that affect host nation calculations, according to defense assessments. The threat of retaliation against regional partners shapes both U.S. planning and regional diplomacy. The apparent reluctance of key regional partners to serve as platforms for strikes reflects their own security calculations and relationships with Iran. Regional stability concerns may favor diplomatic resolution over military escalation. THAAD and Patriot air defense systems are reportedly being deployed to U.S. bases across the Middle East, strengthening protection against ballistic and cruise threats, according to defense reporting. The deployment aims to address the defense concerns identified in the Wall Street Journal reporting. The deployments are reportedly going to bases in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan, according to various reports on the defensive buildup. These systems provide layered protection against different categories of missile threats. The focus on defensive preparations before any offensive action reflects the assessment that Iranian retaliation could be significant. Protecting bases, allies, and regional partners is reportedly a prerequisite for larger operations, according to the Wall Street Journal report. The defensive buildup continues even as diplomatic channels remain active. The parallel tracks of military preparation and diplomatic engagement characterize the current phase of the crisis. Iran accepts negotiating on nuclear issues in exchange for an end to sanctions, but maintains missiles and regional relationships are off the table, according to reporting on Iranian positions. This framework defines the scope of potential negotiations from Tehran's perspective. The gap between U.S. demands and Iranian red lines presents challenges for any diplomatic resolution. Washington reportedly seeks comprehensive changes while Tehran limits discussion to the nuclear file and sanctions relief. Internal tensions in Iran continue with protests and detentions affecting the domestic environment, according to various reporting. How internal pressures affect Iranian negotiating positions is difficult to assess from outside. The negotiating positions of both sides suggest that even if talks proceed, reaching agreement will require significant compromise. The terms acceptable to both parties remain unclear as diplomatic efforts continue. Officials said the U.S. could carry out limited airstrikes quickly, but a larger operation would likely trigger a similar or broader reaction from Iran across the region, according to the Wall Street Journal report. The distinction is significant for understanding U.S. options and constraints. Limited strikes might target specific facilities while avoiding the kind of sustained campaign that would trigger maximum Iranian retaliation. However, the line between limited and larger operations may be difficult to control once hostilities begin. A larger operation would require the additional defensive preparations currently underway, according to the Wall Street Journal assessment. The timeline for such preparations affects the window for potential action. The reported preference for ensuring defensive readiness before larger operations suggests that any near-term action, if it occurs, would likely be limited in scope. Whether limited action would achieve U.S. objectives or trigger escalation regardless remains uncertain. The F-35 played a key role during what has been called U.S. Operation Midnight Hammer against Iran in June 2025, according to reporting on that operation. The reference provides context for current aircraft movements and capabilities. Reports show additional F-15Es have deployed, and F-35As were seen transiting toward Europe. Final destination not confirmed. Analysts often view stealth aircraft as useful for high-risk strike missions, but current intent is not confirmed. However, Iranian officials have claimed their defenses can counter such aircraft. These claims cannot be independently verified and are viewed with skepticism by Western analysts, as discussed in previous reporting on Iranian air defense capabilities. The deployment of specific aircraft types sends signals about U.S. capabilities. Whether these movements serve deterrence, coercive diplomacy, or operational preparation depends on decisions yet to be made. Khamenei's messaging emphasizes Iranian resolve and frames the country as responding to aggression rather than initiating conflict. The Iranian nation shall not be intimidated by these things, he said, according to state media coverage. The framing positions Iran as defensive while warning of significant consequences for any attack. We are not the initiators and do not want to attack any country, but the Iranian nation will strike a strong blow against anyone who attacks, Khamenei said, according to the reporting. This messaging serves both domestic and international audiences. Domestically, it projects strength amid economic pressures and internal tensions. Internationally, it aims to deter attack by emphasizing costs and resolve. The consistency of Iranian messaging about regional consequences reflects Tehran's strategic framework. Whether this deterrence succeeds depends on how Washington assesses costs and benefits of various courses of action. Trump's public statements consistently pair military positioning with emphasis on negotiated outcomes. "Hopefully, we'll make a deal," he said, according to reported comments, even while describing the military assets deployed. The framing presents military buildup as leverage for diplomacy rather than preparation for imminent conflict. This approach, coercive diplomacy, uses the threat of force to extract concessions without actually employing force. Trump has repeatedly stated his preference for a deal over military action, according to various reporting on his public comments. The sincerity and terms of this preference are debated by analysts with different perspectives. The question is whether the coercive approach produces diplomatic progress or hardens positions. Historical experience with such strategies is mixed, and outcomes depend on factors including each side's assessment of the other's resolve. The Wall Street Journal report offers one window into internal planning concerns based on officials' accounts. It suggests that despite public rhetoric, defensive readiness is being prioritized alongside any offensive considerations. The report indicates that protecting allies and bases is considered important before any major action, according to the officials cited. This priority shapes approaches regardless of political rhetoric. The public disclosure of these concerns may serve various purposes, signaling caution, managing expectations, or creating pressure for diplomatic resolution. The motivations of officials who spoke to reporters cannot be determined from outside. For observers tracking the situation, the report provides insight into U.S. deliberations that are typically not visible. Whether this represents the consensus view or one perspective among many cannot be determined. Any conflict involving U.S. strikes on Iran would occur in a complex regional context with significant implications beyond the immediate parties. American forces operate from bases throughout the Gulf region that could face Iranian retaliation. Energy infrastructure, critical shipping lanes, and broader regional stability all factor into assessments of potential conflict costs. The economic and political costs of any exchange extend well beyond direct military effects. The Strait of Hormuz is a major global energy choke point, so any escalation there can rattle markets. Iranian threats to disrupt shipping add economic dimensions to security calculations. Regional allies face difficult calculations about the risks of involvement and the consequences of escalation. These calculations affect both U.S. planning and the broader diplomatic environment. The diplomatic developments, agreed talks, regional mediation, Iranian authorization for negotiations create a potential window for de-escalation. Whether this window is used effectively depends on decisions in multiple capitals. The parallel tracks of military preparation and diplomatic engagement mean that escalation and de-escalation remain simultaneously possible. The current situation is unstable, with multiple potential trajectories. Trump's emphasis on deals and Iranian statements about willingness to negotiate suggest both sides see value in diplomatic outcomes. However, the terms of any acceptable agreement remain unclear and potentially incompatible. For observers, the key question is whether diplomacy can produce results before military dynamics create their own momentum. The coming days and weeks may prove decisive for which track prevails. Tensions between the U.S. and Iran remain high, but diplomacy